What's going on? Hey, what's going on?
Hey! Get down! Get down! Get down! Get down!
And then within seconds, somebody's dead.
We can't afford to do that for much longer.
They get called in to clean up the mess every day.
Hello everyone, I am Dave Cupp. Welcome to another episode of Before the Court. We're taping this today on Thursday, April 29th, 2021. And as we tape this tonight, our nation is in turmoil. Only days ago, we watched a jury return a verdict of guilty in the trial of Derek Chauvin for the murder of George Floyd. Since then, we've been roiling over case after case. From Daunte Wright to Adam Toledo in Chicago, to Miles Jackson, to Anthony Thompson Jr. shot in the bathroom at his school, to Andrew Brown Jr. in North Carolina, to 16-year-old Ma'Khia Bryant in Ohio, and undoubtedly so many more. Our country can't take much more before something somewhere has got to give. Tonight, we'll be looking closely and in depth at the unbelievably tragic case of Ma'Khia Bryant. We'll talk about the multiple ways people are viewing this case and some of the misunderstandings at play, which makes everything worse. So, we have far more to discuss than we'll have time for, but let's do the best we can and start out by bringing in our favorite expert panelists. Panelists, come on in and join me. As usual, we have with us tonight criminal defense attorney Heather Waddell.
Good evening.
Retired Deputy Chief of Detectives for Chicago PD, Joe Gandersky.
Hello, everyone.
And author of the Blue Book, The Talk, A Black Community's Guide to Police Etiquette, author Aric Anderson. Panelists, welcome back. It's so good to see you. We're going to have a look at these three body cameras that we have, and then we'll go about our weekly task of dissecting and reviewing as usual. But before we do that, I have something I need to say to our viewers and to the general public at large. My friends, it seems to me, as I watch TV, as I read through comments sent to us as well as other online posts and shows, that we may all be on the same game board together, but it seems the police are playing checkers while most of the rest of us are playing Connect Four. We seem to have no real agreement on or even real understanding of the mutual rules of the game. And when nobody agrees on the rules, everyone is cheating. Now, this needs to be explained thoroughly and extensively so that we can all be speaking the same language, watching the same videos, seeing the same things, and responding to the same truths. The police cannot use lethal force to gain your compliance. So, if you resist, if you run, if you flee, if you ignore the officer's commands, the police cannot use lethal force against you for those things in and of themselves. They can use less lethal force in those situations to gain your compliance. This means that tasers, pepper spray, batons, punches, even verbal de-escalation, all of these things can be used to gain control of a subject and gain their compliance, but none of these tools are remotely reliable enough to be used against an imminent lethal threat. The police can and do use lethal force against what they perceive to be imminent lethal threats, or anything that constitutes an imminent threat of death or great bodily harm to the officer or any other person. Pay close attention to that terminology because that's the language used by the Supreme Court, and it represents the law of the land. Police officers can use lethal force against a person who is posing what the officer perceives to be an imminent threat of death or great harm. And this word imminent is crucial, as it means the threat is happening right now and must be stopped right now. Pay very careful attention to this next part. When engaging in imminent threat of death or great harm, There are no other methods left to try at that point. And so the police are trained specifically not to shoot to wound a subject, such as shooting for an arm or a leg, despite how many people seem to think that's a good idea. But it's not done for two very important reasons. One, very often in heat of the moment gun battles, the vast majority of shots miss their targets completely. The most likely area to hit is the largest and most stable area, the torso, also known as center mass. For an officer to attempt, again, in the heat of a split-second encounter, to be able to aim for and hit a moving target, arm or a leg, is very unlikely, and certainly not reliable enough to stop a threat immediately. But the second reason is even more important, and again comes back to that word imminent. Because the officers perceive an imminent threat, there is absolutely no time to try a wound shot and then wait to see if that works. Far too often, people who are in the act of committing an imminent threat are filled with multiple times the regular dose of adrenaline. Their emotions are raging. They may be in shock. They may even be on a variety of narcotics or other substances. Wounding shots simply do not consistently stop threats immediately in real life, but very often drive that threat to be even more angry, more aggressive, and continue to carry out the threat. Again, because the police are responding to what they perceive to be an imminent threat of death, they are trained specifically to fire for center mass and to continue to fire until the threat has ceased all ability to continue carrying out that threat. Now, am I either justifying or accusing any one particular case? No, of course not. But I am laying out information which I hope we will all retain and remember, so that when we see another one of these horrific events play out, we can apply these policies to what we see and come to some sort of a legal judgment on whether we saw a lawful use of force or a criminal act. My goal with this information, as with this entire show, is to help bridge the gaps of miscommunication happening between our communities and the officers who serve them. And with all that being said, I'm now going to turn over to our panelists. Joe, you first. Come at me right now. Where am I right? Where am I wrong? What do you think of what I just said?
Yeah, well, you're generally right. And the problem is in perception of different groups that have different agendas. Some people look for what's wrong. Some people look for what's right in any kind of situation. But essentially what you said is correct. You have scenarios where shootings take place and immediately false and misleading information is spread out and it enrages the community, and it goes like throughout the community like wildfire, and it creates problems immediately that the police can't respond to because they don't want to give out false information. They would like to have investigations finished before they're able to give some sort of narrative.
Heather, what I just said, how does that conform with the law as you know it?
It was, like Joe just said, pretty accurate throughout. There were a few things that I think you said in specific application to police officers that actually are not specific to officers of the law, but rather to everyone. If you perceive an imminent threat of great bodily harm or death to yourself or someone else in your immediate vicinity, you are allowed to also use deadly force. And it becomes a determination if you're charged criminally as to what was reasonable given the circumstances and the totality of the circumstances, the reasonable person in your shoes. Would they have thought that they needed to use deadly force to stop an imminent threat of great bodily harm or death to self or another? So it's not just police, it's everyone.
Aric, you, I know, train with firearms. What are your thoughts on what I explained? How does that conform with what you know to be the case?
I think you're pretty spot on with everything. There was a couple of things that you mentioned, and wait, it was about police cheating, but they're not cheating. They're using the laws that have been created for them. So they're abiding within their rights. I think the majority of the time. I think the general public, and I like to say this all the time, people think that what they see on TV or the TV laws are reality laws, and it's not the case. It's completely opposite. So when we hear people talk about, hey, well, why didn't they shoot her in the leg, shoot her in the arm, or shoot him in the buttocks, that slow them down?
Yeah,
That's not what they see on TV, and it's not reality. When there's an imminent threat, it has to be stopped, and there is no time to second guess what you're doing. You're making that decision right away.
With that said, you guys ready to jump into this video? We'll come back and get into it right after this.
Hey. What's going on? Hey, what's going on?
Hey, 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 get down, get down, get down, get down.
No, you ain't shoot my fucking baby. You shot my baby. Are you fucking serious? I swear to God, you killed my fucking shot. Are you stupid? Are you fucking serious? She shot.
Back up.
Is she shot?
She had a knife, she just went at her.
She's a fucking kid, man. Damn, are you stupid? A fucking kid? Hold on. I told you to put the I told you to Oh, y'all motherfuckers can forget the Get out of my chair! I'm telling you now! That shouldn't even matter! You come on fucking body out!
All right, what do you need me to do? What do you need me to do? What do you need me to do?
Try to pull her.
All right. All right, what do you need? All right, you need to pull her down? This way. We're out this way. All right. Hold on. I'll take this.
200.
She came at her with a knife.
A kid with a fucking face. You shot her cousin with a knife. You shot my baby.
Babe, I didn't do anything. I didn't do anything.
Serious. She shot.
She had a knife. She just went at her.
200, we need that 24 out here.
Are you guys okay? Are officers okay?
Officers are okay.
I told Fiona, put your hands up.
You want to come sit in my car, please? Come sit in my car, okay? Come. Just come.
Can you get my phone for my mama?
Yeah, I'll get that later. Come sit in my car.
Babe, I didn't do anything.
Just stay right here. Just stay right here.
9201, code 1, will be on the 3 en route.
She just hit at me. I just got here. Babe, it's okay. Calm down. It's okay.
Yeah, 200, we need more cars for witnesses.
Okay, I've got a 10-3 roll. I need more cars.
Have a seat. Work quick.
Don't say nothing. Keep your hands up.
200, is this still involved?
I do. I understand.
Hey, firm. Have a seat. All right, come sit over here in this car. Ma'am, come sit here. Go ahead and have a seat.
I just pulled up here.
Let's hurry up, please. This is urgent. Have a seat, please.
Get my phone and keys.
I'm going to have you sit in that car over there, okay?
Oh my fucking God, bro!
Ma'am, come with me. Yeah, I'll get it later.
I need more cars. 10-3 roll. I need more cars.
Selfish son of a bitch, man, for shooting that girl.
Ma'am, come with me.
That is crazy. My phone is right there. My keys.
I'll get it later. Let's go first.
Shoot a girl. And she ain't come at you with no life. She fucking came out with her.
She came out at you with a knife earlier?
No, she just. That's what the police did.
That lady on the floor?
She came after me.
With a knife?
Yeah, so he got her. Can you please get my phone and stuff? Please,
Have a seat for me. Have a seat for me. Yes, we'll get it. We'll get everything.
Please, sir.
Guys, back up, back up.
Sergeant, copy. S9, copy. You want an LTD copy? 17, we don't have an LTD book. I'm trying to find one now. Yes, sir. 200, we got a medic roll. Medics are rolling, sir. MTD has been advised, they're en route.
Get out of here.
S9, do we have an L5? Take care of it, ma'am.
You just got out the car and shot it. I watched the whole thing.
Sir, I'm going to have you go over there.
I watched the whole thing.
Medic on Legion.
You don't keep saying it.
Yeah, that's 16. I'm not clear to go in right now on Legion. Yeah, man, go straight in, please. Go straight in.
Watch the whole thing.
Send them in. Send them in.
Shots fired. 200 shots fired. She had a knife. She just went at her.
200, we need that 24. Are you guys okay? Officers okay?
Officers are okay.
That's my copy en route.
Where you hit, man?
9201, code 1, flip me on the 3 en route.
You want your... Yeah, it's right here.
Yeah, don't move that. What do you need me to do?
We need to try to. You want to try to pull her so we can.
We need more cars for witnesses.
Yeah, I've got a 10-3 rolling. I need more cars.
What do you need? You need to pull her out this way. Pull her out this way. Hold on.
200. Is this deal involved?
200 acre.
He shot her. Why you shoot her?
Where's she hit?
A knife. Hold on.
Where's she hit? Is she breathing?
I watched the whole thing.
She charged her, but she came at her with a knife.
You didn't have to shoot her with
the leg?
That's a fucking girl. Now she's dead for what? You had just got over this shit.
I don't know if you feel pulses and start compressions.
And you're gonna shoot her for nothing?
Get us more cars for crowd control, please. Come on, stay with it. Come on, don't argue with them. Hey, watch her backs. Watch her backs. Come on. Leave that knife. Do not.
Wake up, ma'am.
Come on. Come on. Stay with us. Come on.
Stay with us.
Keep that knife close.
No knife. Back up. She did not come with no knife at you.
The knife's right here.
I see the knife, but she didn't come at you with the knife. She came at that.
Come on. Come on. Stay with me. What's her name? What's her name? Ma'Khia, come on. Stay with us, Ma'Khia. Come on. Stay with us, Ma'Khia. Come on. Come on. Stay. Stay.
Radio 2, Eddie. Copy.
Get the medic in here. We don't have an LT. Try to find one now. Come on. Stay with Ma'Khia.
200. We got a medic roll.
Come on.
Medics are rolling, sir.
Come on. Watch her back, please. Come on. Hang with us.
You
got one?
Take care of it, ma'am.
You just got out the car and shot her. I watched the whole.
Come on. All right, don't talk to him. Don't talk to him. Come on, Ma'Khia. Come on, Ma'Khia.
You ain't she's dead.
Come on, Ma'Khia. Stay with us.
Stay with us.
Come on.
What you mean? Come on, Ma'Khia. You just jumped out.
Yeah, bring him in.
I watched the whole thing.
Come on. Back him up. Hey, back everybody up. Come on, Ma'Khia. Stay with us. Come on. Stay with us. Come on. Come on. Stay with us, Ma'Khia. Come on. Come on.
Aric, how do we reconcile, as a society, how do we reconcile seeing something like this with the fact that people are telling us not only is that the law, but it was in fact exactly what the police officer was supposed to do? How do we reconcile this?
Boy, reconcile. If everyone was doing what they're supposed to be doing, we wouldn't have this situation. You know, I think the community at that given time is outraged that the young woman was shot. Man, this might not be popular, but the community should have been outraged. There was a fight going on and nobody doing anything to stop it before it even got to that point. So there is responsibility everywhere, but for an officer to come into that situation, and I'm not sure why his gun was drawn in the first place. I didn't see a weapon come out, but he guessed right, and it appears he stopped her from stabbing someone else. So I want to say that, you know, our pride is not more valuable than our lives, and we have to treat our lives like they're valuable, and especially if we want others to view us that same way.
Yeah. Joe, what was he supposed to do?
This is a strictly case of making a split-second decision. I mean, I watched other tapes relative to this that showed the scenario more clearly. If he doesn't shoot, either the girl in the pink dies, the lady in the pink dies, or gets stabbed. I mean, she's making the move to violently swing that knife into her direction. He hesitates. She's stabbed. There's no question in my mind that's what happened. So he doesn't do anything. The other girl gets stabbed. If he shoots this girl, she dies. There's no time to do anything else but shoot. And there's no taser. There's no stop, drop the knife, nothing. It's just strictly 1, 2, but 9 seconds from he got out of the car. I saw from another film. It was 9 seconds from when he got out of the car, and the 9 seconds is cut down to about 1 second from when they come flying out of the house. When the other guy who's mad that he shot a woman was kicking the other girl in the head. So it's just total chaos. The only thing his attention was originally drawn to that scuffle going on between the male and the female on the ground, and then she moved towards the woman in pink, which was the woman in pink was up against the car, and immediately the knife was there. It was just there, and she's swinging it, and that's it. Boom, 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 boom. I don't even think the officer even thought about it and what he did. I mean, he just knew that's what he had to act. If he didn't act, it's over for somebody.
Heather, let me ask you something. From a legal point of view, it seems almost impossible. It seems like we're asking a police officer in that particular situation to pick a life. From the legal point of view, walk me through what you saw. What was your impression, either on a human side or from a legal side?
That's a very interesting question, Dave. So I think the first and foremost thing that needs to be said is the biggest reason people are having such a dissonance with this, because like you said, there's obviously this happened in split seconds. And is this it's either this girl gets hurt by the hand of someone violently trying to attack her, maybe killed, or I try to stop the attack and hopefully she lives, but maybe something happens. It is almost a pick a life, and you have to kind of make that determination of who's the bad guy. I think the issue is people have a really, really hard time with essentially someone bringing a gun to a knife fight, and that theme of the kind of combat pragmatist of someone who kind of fights without any honor or abiding by rules so long as they win. And you start to kind of feel that with, again, someone who uses a gun when the other person has a knife. And I'm fully aware of the capabilities that knives have. They are deadly weapons. A skilled person with a knife can absolutely beat a person with a gun who doesn't know how to use a gun, a firearm. But again, to the public, at first glance, at first response, I think it's very hard for people to grasp and understand why you would use essentially a more lethal force than the lethal force that was being used. I think that the second thing is, like Joe just said, it was about 9 seconds from get out of the car to shots to Ma'Khia on the ground. And it's an interesting thing because if through the rest of the discussions with that I don't believe he was the chief of police, but he indicated that the response time from when the first 911 call came in to when the officer arrived was 12 minutes. And I think it's also interesting that in that 12 minutes, while there did appear to be chaos, nobody was hurt that you could see. Nobody was bleeding on the ground. He didn't need to attend to anybody. And then within seconds, somebody's dead. And it almost gives you this appearance of everything was fine, quote, fine, until the police arrived. and they escalated it. And, you know, you have these 911 tapes where people are calling, begging for help, for somebody to come help. And I don't think that anybody imagines that helping stop a fight, even if it's a knife fight, means that all of a sudden guns are going to be drawn, guns are going to be fired. And I think that's where the issue lies. And again, people don't know the laws that we all created and that we abide by to live in society, that allow you to, when, again, as you said, Dave, when there is an imminent threat of death or great bodily harm, that anyone, not just an officer, is allowed to stop that. So that could have been anybody. I mean, the officer arrived, but anybody there who maybe had a gun as well could have actually stopped that and been within their rights. And I think people lose sight of that as well, because in our particularly recent knowledge of events, see the officers as playing by a different set of rules because they have more firepower.
You know, I understand what Heather's saying, but here's the thing. When I'd read a couple other articles relative to this backstory on this. Apparently these girls, they get into disputes all the time. It's a foster house. They're there. This dispute was about the house not being neat and the foster mother, insisting on it being whatever. But when we have to accept that it's kind of a situation. See, the normal public's not used to seeing what happens on a day-to-day basis out there. They see police-involved shootings, and the violence is always being meted out by the police, the deadly force, okay? But every day there's fights like this. This isn't exactly a low-income neighborhood, type of thing. This is a kind of a middle-class type area. But when you start to accept this idea of chaos and dissonance in a household, and foster homes are difficult enough, foster families, a foster life is difficult enough for these kids. Okay, when you start to become used to a level of violence, a level of non-harmony and domestic upheaval, this is the type of stuff that can happen. However, I would say, again, we got a one-person car going into a domestic situation with 7 or 8 people just hanging out, okay?
So that was the first thing I noticed too, one-person car.
We've been on this every week.
Mm-hmm.
When are these departments going to learn to protect their officers? It was supposedly 12 minutes.
Yep.
Probably response time in an more urban city like Chicago is probably better. Used to be anyway.
Yeah.
I don't know what it's going to be now, but officers are just going to start hanging back and go in there 3, 4 at a time, and I don't blame them. I don't blame them.
Heather, let me ask you something. I thought we saw something very interesting, for lack of a better term. I thought we saw at some point in that incident, who was clearly originally the victim, at some point became the aggressor. Is that a common thing in the law? Do you see that often, where people either misuse self-defense or don't quite understand self-defense, and someone who's a victim suddenly is now the criminal?
Yes. So there's case law, Supreme Court case law, that you can use to essentially show in any given situation who may have been the first aggressor if there's a dispute as to that effect. Because there are so many things, especially when there aren't witnesses or if it's not on camera, where people in their own perception of an event, in their own memory, think that something happened a certain way, even though it may not have. So we have tools to kind of show what was more likely, who more likely was the first aggressor, or if somebody was a first aggressor and then, backed off and the other person stopped. If somebody then reinitiates, then they become the first aggressor of that next scenario. So it's not always as clean cut as just one person did it, the other person's the victim. It's a fluid thing oftentimes. But we do have tools to kind of, again, suss things out. but it's certainly not always as clear cut as just one person's the aggressor, one person is the victim.
Aric, as civilians, you and I think you also train with a firearm. It's situations like this that always make me very nervous because, boy, the law and a temper or a short emotion or just a quick, unthought out action can so quickly take you from being clearly the victim of something to all of a sudden you're going to prison or, God forbid, you get shot. It's a really tricky thing how the law determines who's at fault, who's the victim, who's not, and that can change back and forth so quickly. What do you think about that?
Well, yeah, it's a fact. I think in this case, I think they said that she made the 911 call, but as the officer arrives, one girl is thrown to the ground. She's kicked by, and I think this is a minor, and then she's kicked by an adult, what appears to be an adult. Girl, I think it looks like she reaches down, has a knife, and then she's after the lady in pink, and I mean it happened quickly. So you could, I guess I would be, I was looking for not retaliation, but maybe self-defense to see if she was trying to defend herself. But in that case, I mean, the woman in pink has a dog in her hand and she's just trying to avoid being attacked. So at that point, it doesn't look like self-defense. It looks like she's like she's in attack mode.
Dave.
Yeah.
In my mind, when stuff like this happens, nobody gives a damn what the law is. Mm-hmm. They're just acting purely out of anger, fury. It's just, do you think that she thought for 2 seconds there's police coming? In fact, she might have seen the police outside, the officer coming there knowing that he's got a gun. No, I don't think so. I think she was just going to continue the fight and it went to the ground and it immediately escalated, kept escalating till the point where she just saw fury after she was down on the ground and went after the woman in pink. I don't know if the woman in pink ever said anything to her, but she's moved over to that area first and then moved back to the car. But that's the problem. People don't think about the law when this stuff happens. Their blood's boiling and they just go.
Of course. Heather, you said something really interesting that I keep playing back now, and now I'm sort of wondering something. You were pointing out how the response time was like 12 minutes, and yet somehow within 9 seconds of him arriving, after all that 12 minutes, then it happens in the 9 seconds. Do you get the feeling at all that she might have been waiting for the police to get there before she defended herself, or do you think this just happened to be a horrible coincidence that she came out and the police were there and
I think it's hard to tell. It may have just been the culmination of just too much going on, too much chaos. And again, it was so quick to see who was attacking whom and at what juncture. But like we said, it didn't appear that the woman in pink was whatsoever being antagonistic toward her at the juncture that she started wielding a knife. Especially if she is the one that actually called 911 in the first place, I do think it's bizarre to not have just kind of been like, oh, thank God they're here. Now I can get help. Now I can explain myself calmly. But I think, as Joe said, this was clearly not a situation where calmer heads were prevailing. And I don't know. I think, again, the biggest issue I think that people started having instantly, and you could hear it right away with the witnesses watching the entire thing go down. It was just kind of like a almost righteous indignation of like, how dare you bring this gun to a knife fight? But again, people don't understand and don't think about the implications of what that could have meant to the girl in pink, or could have meant to anybody else out there. There could have been 6 people mortally wounded. And, you have an officer, again, who was called there to help, called to a situation, a disturbance, and ended up, as we just kind of said, having to maybe pick pick a life very quickly. And yeah, I don't think it's necessarily fair to judge his actions or his decisions just because people don't understand the law and don't understand the situation.
You know, Dave, and here's the thing that you just have to play out, okay? What if the police were took another 5 minutes to get there? Take the same scenario that happens. The girl in pink stabbed now. Somebody's infuriated. Whoever's a relative or related to the girl in pink, they go get their gun, they go get their knife, and now the whole neighborhood's shot up, and there's bodies laying all over the place. I mean, that happens a lot. I mean, it gets escalated, and it just gets to a point where there's mayhem, and when everybody looks back and they all look at it, holy, what happened here? How did this get to this situation? There's 2 or 3 bodies laying there. So
Aric, let me. I want to ask Aric, but really I want to ask all of you. I want all of your impressions on this. This is something really has been sticking in my mind. I'm seeing a lot of comments on social media. I'm hearing a lot of comments from people that police have no business interfering in a knife fight. Where does this come from? Is this just coming from a general frustration, or is that something you think somebody really thinks that?
I can't speculate on that. That's not logical to me. I mean, the police are there to protect and serve. That's exactly what they did in that case. So the comments and outrage from the public, it just, some of it doesn't make sense to me. So I can't comment or speculate why.
Joe, real fast technical question for you. Are police officers allowed to fire their gun in the air as a warning shot?
They're absolutely not allowed. These are any kind of warning shots. Now, it's interesting because I saw a comment by some other police agency saying that their agency authorizes warning shots into the ground. Well, I'll tell you right now, if they have that policy, they should scrap it. The bottom line is you don't fire a weapon until you intend to hit somebody. That's the bottom line. So all of that warning shots in the air, the bullet's got to come down somewhere about a quarter mile away onto the kid's head that's riding the tricycle, the mama, with the baby in the stroller. That's ridiculous. Okay. Especially anywhere, just blanket. No, absolutely no. That's a no, period. No warning shots. You fire your weapon, you intend to shoot somebody. End of story.
In fact, some places it's a crime. People have gone to jail for discharging weapons just up into the air.
I have plenty of clients who've had that aggravated discharge of a firearm.
Yeah.
Heather, what sort of change, forget policy and procedure, what sort of change has there been that you're aware of in the laws regarding self-defense and use of force in the last 20 years, 30 years? I don't know. When are the last time those were changed?
She's a kid.
Before I was born.
She is a kid, but I'm hoping maybe she read some history.
So, funnily enough, the theory of self-defense generally, and as you talked about in the very beginning, the imminent threats of great bodily harm or death, those go all the way back to the common law. So that's before America as we know it, the United States, even existed. This is stuff from, England and all the way, I think Greece. This is stuff that goes very far back as far as we understand a legal system to have occurred. That there's a moral and just kind of evolutionary thing that we hold very dear, that you need to protect self and others from harm or death. And it's a survival instinct, deep down. I think that some of the policy changes that have happened, and I think maybe some of them, like Joe was talking about, that you can't shoot anybody for, a burglary anymore, hanging out of a window with a TV, is we decided, well, at least it's just stuff. It's just things. It's not a person. It's not a human being. It's not a life. So we made at least that shift somewhere to say, this is more important than this. But I think there's still a very deeply ingrained from, again, as far back as humanity understood a rule of law, that we cannot abide the threat of life, whether it's to self or someone else imminently being attacked.
Aric, you know what's frustrating to me is that, and I don't mean to put this on me at all, but it's frustrating to me that when we try to explain why some particular thing happened or why the police did something, so many people tend to discount that, or they take it as you're making an excuse or you're making a justification. And I just wonder if people would be more receptive to getting that information before one of these cases happens, and then be able to go back and reference it rather than already be upset and have somebody you don't want to hear from tell you that you're wrong.
Well, yeah, of course, if you have the knowledge, the information prior to your feelings getting involved, you're going to interpret that situation a lot differently. It's hard to watch and it's frustrating to see. Again, if that fight was going on for 12 plus minutes and the officer rolled up, it didn't look like anyone was trying to stop a fight. It looked like they were all just watching the fight. So again, how can you blame someone from coming in and stopping what appears to be a death about to happen? To me, that is reality. So your feelings about what transpired before or after are irrelevant. You had an opportunity to quash all that before it even happened. And what did you do? And maybe they did do something and you just don't see it. But I try to pause even in slow motion, looking what neighbors were doing, and everyone was standing around watching. I mean, even the one, except for that one guy that went in and decided he was going to jump in and attack too. But that wasn't trying to stop the situation. It was trying to become more involved in the situation, in my opinion.
Heather, let me just ask you something real direct. Do you think it's a good thing that our entire culture can keep watching these videos? Or do you think it's doing maybe more harm than good?
I think it has maybe reached the point of diminishing returns. I think people are getting so exhausted and fatigued that they have brain fog and can't even think and see clearly at this point. And people just have anger and rushes to judgment because they're so tired. When you're exhausted, you can't sit there and go, okay, let's go through this one again. You just kind of look at it quickly and go, okay, here's my opinion, here's my judgment. And I don't think that's helpful to anyone. So yeah, the more of these that kind of come out, again, without proper context, without somebody who understands it being able to explain the law behind it or the policy behind it, I think can be dangerous. The same way any kind of power or thing can be dangerous in the wrong hands with someone who doesn't have the proper knowledge of how to use it. And that's where I think this is part of the breakdown, again, that people just aren't armed with enough knowledge to even perceive things correctly at this juncture. So to keep being inundated with just, again, these videos without proper context, without the knowledge that is required to be able to process these things effectively, to be able to do something constructive with them, I think we're going to start to go backwards. I think everyone's just going to get completely, turned inside out.
And I want to add to that, Dave.
Yeah, please.
Education is clearly needed. We need to educate our older generation, our youth. But I've been thinking about this for the past week now, actually longer than that. But we need to make sure that our youngest people, kids in the 3rd, 4th, 5th grade, come up with this type of knowledge that they know what they're supposed to do, what they're not supposed to do. And I think until we start educating the masses, or the masses wanting to be educated. We're just going to keep spinning our wheels, and we can't afford to do that for much longer.
Yeah. Heather said people are, as a result of a lot of this videos being available, we're being in the, but the press generally chooses which ones we see a lot. But regardless, sometimes, an incident happens and the departments are forced to come out with something. And people are getting heartsick over it. They're getting upset over it. They're getting worn out from seeing this. Okay. How do you think police officers feel when they are there watching it live every day? Okay. Scenarios like this, domestic violence that doesn't make any sense, people that don't know the law, people that disrupt the neighborhood. And it's this idea that now knowledge and moving forward in society, instead of stuck in ignorance and illiteracy and the idea that prejudice and a certain idea that's pumped into your head as to how things are. The police are always the enemy. They don't belong in our neighborhoods, et cetera, stuff like that is the police get tired of it, but again, they get called in to clean up the mess every day, and they're sick of it, and they're brilliant, and they're getting beat up. The officer had no time, no nothing. He did what he needed to do. Somebody be dead if he didn't. I'm amazed that he didn't. That the girl in pink wasn't shot along with the girl with the knife, because they were so close and the action was so close. He did what he needed to do. He's probably heartsick that he had to do it. He should be proud of what he did, that he was able to act and save a life. It's going to be hard for him to feel that way, I'm sure. But other police officers need to support him because he did the right thing.
Heather.
In a situation like this, where it was almost a choose a life, like a Sophie's choice, I do believe that, again, with moments, seconds to react, seeing a threat, seeing a deadly threat, imminent, he did what he believed, and I think reasonably so, he needed to do to stop the threat. I think he was justified in his actions. I think, like Joe just said, I think they were hard. I don't think he's particularly proud of himself that a girl is dead, but I hope he can have some kind of solace in that. I don't want to say that the right girl is dead, but if someone else is attacking someone else's life, you have to, again, we have a deeply ingrained thing to want to protect a victim, to protect others who are not doing anything wrong. So I think if he can take solace in that he did protect and save a life that was in jeopardy by the hand of another, I hope he can do that. But I believe that legally, at least, and policy-wise, he was justified.
Aric, finish us off.
He's justified for what he did. I mean, he took a life, attempting to save a life. So, in my opinion, you can't fault him for that. So he was justified in his action. Why he had his revolver pulled in the first place, that's the only thing I would question. But I mean, it was lucky that he did have it out at the time.
I'm not sure what else to say about this case, because I feel that no matter how much we want to look at it from a legal, a tactical, a policy point of view, there's just going to be so much of this culture who doesn't want to hear it and won't hear it, and they want to be angry, and I can't say I blame them right now for wanting to be angry and frustrated. Panelists, thank you all so much, particularly for being involved in what I thought to be one of the more difficult cases. Not legally, not more questionable, but just difficult to talk about. It's hard to watch a teenager be killed. Thank you all. And I appreciate you, and we'll see you next week. There you have it, my friends. This case, more than most we've talked about so far, I have found very difficult. I don't find it difficult because of the question of justification or lack of justification. I find it difficult because it's just not right. It's just not normal to watch a child be taken out of this world, a 16-year-old, teenager, be taken out of the world. It's not okay, and it's not normal. But if we're going to be intellectually honest with ourselves, if we want to actually make a difference, if we want to actually change the things that we can't stand to see again, then we have to acknowledge some harsh truths and face some difficult realities that oftentimes we don't want to. I hope that you have found some helpful information, some insight in tonight's conversation. If you have opinions that you want to share with us, if you have videos you want us to review, if you thought that we were wrong about something and want to tell us what you think, please go ahead and email us at info@beforethecourttv.com. info@beforethecourttv.com. Until next time, I am Dave Cupp. I look forward to seeing you again next week on Before the Court.